What's going on, guys? Jackson here from Vendetta Sports Media, and welcome to another episode of Court is in Session. And sorry, my son is very upset in the next room, so you may hear him come through. You may see me dart over there, look over there, but so I apologize about that. But anyway, welcome to the NBA Draft episode of Court is in Session. Joining me today is one half of the Jimmer Range podcast, Karl Heiser. Karl, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy to be in the courtroom today.
Yeah, man.
I was
Welcome.
excited, to come on as the draft guy, and maybe my esteemed co-host Alex will get on here at some point if the Charlotte Hornets do anything notable. We'll see though.
We'll see. They did rehire a former head coach of theirs today that they initially had parted ways with a few years back. So I feel bad for Cervantes. I really do. Shout out to him. Some interesting stuff happening in the draft with the Hornets, which I'm sure we'll get to at a later part in this episode. But again, Karl joining us today. Him and Cervantes both host a college basketball themed podcast here on the Vendetta Sports Media Podcasting Network called The Jimmer Range Pod. So make sure to go check them out there. I'll put a link down in the description here on the YouTube video to their Twitter page and as well as their TikTok page. Go check them out on TikTok because Karl does a lot of cool things there. And they're closing in on 10,000 followers on TikTok, which is a massive milestone. I don't know too much about the behind stuff that goes on, like with TikTok and everything. That's still pretty new to me, creating content for there. But I know that 10,000 is kind of a big milestone. So congrats, Karl and Jim Arrange for doing that and getting there. My
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.
So we'll go ahead and we'll hop right in. So last night, we were recording this on a Friday. So last night was the 2022 NBA draft. Pretty tame to start out. Wasn't too much excitement, at least in the way of trades. Jalen Duren did slide a little bit. He kind of slid further than I think, Karl, what you had him in your mock, and then what a lot of people were thinking. But then when we get past the first 10 picks, that's when everything started to just kind of cut loose, and there was a lot of confusion there for a little bit. Lots of trades started happening, and then we finally got the draft that the excitement that we crave for, we draft junkies crave for, which is the great part about the NBA draft is you have the NBA junkies and the college junkies all coming together on one night and just like oozing over and trading information. It's a really, really fun time. But Karl, I just want just give me your initial thoughts about the draft. Like just anything that sticks out to you in any way. What's the kind of the first thing that pops to your mind when you think of this draft?
Well, I'd say the last couple of years, we've had the number one pick be super obvious who it was going to be leading up to the draft. Is Cade Cunningham, Zion Williamson. We knew those guys were basically destined to be the number one pick weeks before the draft. The narrative this time around was that Jabari Smith was the guy. That was what every media member said. That's what every insider report said. It's a done deal. Jabari Smith to Orlando. 3 minutes before the draft, we found out actually no, that's not what's happening. Actually, Paolo Banchero from Duke is going to Orlando. Um, and I think a heck of a job by the Orlando front office to keep that under wraps. Because in past years, that has been something that has been free information usually. So that was a very, very interesting part of this year's draft.
Yeah, it was strange because, like you said, and it was something that I kept thinking about during the draft last night, is that for weeks it felt like Jabari Smith was the consensus number one overall pick, and Woj even yesterday morning, that morning of the draft, or like mid latter part of the morning before the afternoon, even tweeted out that the first four picks were pretty set, and it was Jabari, Chet, Paolo, and then Ivy as the one, two, three, four. And then all of a sudden, like an hour or two after he tweeted that out, Vegas just had a massive flip of the odds with Jabari Smith falling, Banchero moving up to the number one overall spot. And then it was a little bit later is when Woj ended up changing it. And as everyone kind of funnily pointed out, ESPN 3 minutes before the start of the draft, changing up their mock, updating their mock with all the latest information that they had. So not sticking to their guns. I felt like that's kind of cheap and cheating almost. As do you think that way as someone that did a couple mocks for the site this year?
Yeah, as a mock draft purist, that's a big no-no. You can't change your mock like 3 minutes before the draft starts. I'm not
No.
about it, but I mean, I guess if you really care that much about having the number one pick right, then
Yeah, but then
go ahead. But
everyone can clearly see that on this date, 3 minutes before the draft starts, it says right there, edited or updated at this time. So everyone can see it. So I guess you can say you got the number one overall pick right, but then I scrolled through the rest of the picks and he still got like a couple of the top 5 and top 10 wrong. So, but
yeah,
he got the
yeah,
number one right. So I guess that's what
fair,
he can say. Sure, whatever.
sure.
Um, just looking through the draft, we can start with your biggest winners of draft night. I got a couple ideas, which I think there is a general consensus on what teams did win and lose the draft, particularly the winning ones. The winning ones I think were pretty easy last night. But in your opinion, who are the biggest winners of last night's draft?
I think one of the biggest winners, without a doubt, is definitely the Detroit Pistons.
Mm-hmm.
We knew going in Jaden Ivey was their guy. That was definitely the guy they wanted to pair alongside Cade Cunningham in that backcourt. It was looking like they were going to have to trade up for him because, Sacramento was holding the number 4 pick hostage. And it sounded like they were taking offers. They were looking to move it. Somebody's going to trade up to 4 and get Ivy. There was talk of the New York Knicks maybe trying to get in the mix. It ended up being fine because Ivy fell to them at 5. And then they pull off this 3-team deal at the 13th pick to land Jalen Duren, which once Jalen Duren slid past 9, I was kind of shocked actually that he slid past 9 to the Spurs. And yeah, I think those are two great pickups for them. Definitely big winners for me, the Detroit Pistons.
Detroit were big winners for me too. Now, we kind of talked about it a little bit to start the show. The weird trade that happened. We had the Woj and Shams showdown that we all know and love. It's a classic battle. Once again, the two guys just going at it. The two reporters going at it, trying to see who could get that tweet out first. I believe the order was Shams had Duran going to New York, which he was technically right on because it was a 3-team trade. It was just how Doran got to Detroit that kind of confused some people. So as far as I could have understood it, the Hornets traded the rights to Jalen Duran when they made the pick to New York. Then New York then turned around almost immediately and sent Duran and Kimball Walker to the Pistons. So that way they could try to clear up cap space. Everyone's thinking that it cleared up like 13 million in cap space, I think. So they're up to almost 20 million in cap, 18 to 20 million in cap now because they're going to try to make a run at Jalen Brunson in the offseason. But that was a really odd like time right there. But
Yeah, that was a stressful 30 seconds for sure.
it was. There was a couple of moments last night where there was so many picks were switching hands, and that's just another thing that I just don't like how the NBA conducts business. Is that the team that owns the pick going into the draft, they still make the pick. That pick could be traded 5 times by the time it gets to that pick. But it'd be like, oh, the Houston Rockets select so and so, but by the time the dude is put on the hat, he's been passed away to 3 different teams, which is essentially what happened to Duran. Duran hadn't even left the stage, and he'd been on technically been on 3 NBA teams by the time he
Yeah, well,
walks off the stage.
I saw a tweet today about Ty Ty Washington, who got drafted
Yeah.
by the Grizzlies at 29, but he was actually getting drafted by the Rockets. And he left his Grizzlies hat in the hotel room and said somebody can find it and become a Grizzlies fan.
My gosh. Ouch. It's fine. We got Kenny Chandler. We don't need you, Ty Ty. We got Kenny Chandler.
It's true. It's true.
All right. So now the opposite. Who was your biggest loser of the draft last night?
I'd say I have a couple losers. Well, I have a couple winners, but I'd say Detroit is maybe my big one.
Okay. Well,
Just because they didn't.
finish up with more winners, and then we'll get to losers then.
Okay, just some other winners. I'll run through them really quick. I like what the Rockets did,
Mm.
getting Tari Eason at 17 and getting Ty Ty at 29. I think those were both very good value picks. I'm not going to give them any extra credit really for getting Jabari at 3 because they were guaranteed Paolo, Chet, or Jabari.
Yeah.
Like it was just whoever was there was who they were going to take. But that's still, it's a good addition. I like what the Spurs did. there are a lot of holes on that San Antonio Spurs roster, and I think the group that they got is a good move in the right direction to start filling some of those holes. Because honestly, outside of DeJounte Murray, I think pretty much everyone on that roster is replaceable, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So I really like the Blake Wesley pick at 25. Um, I like the Pacers draft. I think they drafted really well. I think the Pelicans maybe got the steal of the draft with EJ Liddell at
Hmm.
41. Um,
I couldn't believe he slid as far as he did. Is
it was
even
so bizarre. So bizarre. The amount of people mocking him to 18, it was unbelievable that he fell all the way to the 40s.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that you said. Honestly, like obviously, I already said that, and I even mentioned this last night. I think I tweeted it out. I thought that Houston and Detroit had some of the best drafts. There was a third team that I mentioned too. I can't remember. I can't remember who it was. Oh, Houston. Yeah, Houston, Detroit. What was the other one that I mentioned? I can't remember. Either way, but I did like Houston's picks. Tari Eason, I definitely wanted him to be a Grizzly. I liked what he brought defensively, although I do like what the Grizzlies did, and I'll ask you to personally grade the Grizzlies' picks later. um, but yeah, I liked again. I liked what Washington did. You brought up the Pacers and the Spurs. I think the Spurs, yeah, lots of holes. There's a lot of things that they could do. It was almost like they couldn't go in a wrong direction here. They just had to make sure the guys that they picked were going to be contributing NBA players. As long as they're not, picking massive busts or super projects, like guys that could be something but really aren't. They need as solid players or as NBA ready players as they can. Although getting what is it? How do you say his name? Is it Sohan?
Jeremy Sohan. Yeah.
Sohan, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Me, the expert in name pronunciation, hosting a podcast here with a lot of players whose names I've only heard maybe 4 or 5 times in the past week. So, I'm the perfect person to be leading this podcast. But him going at 9, that was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought they would have gone with Jalen Duren. I guess they're going to rock with Jakob Pertl, or maybe they could try to steal DeAndre Ayton in the in the offseason. But I still think that they had an excellent draft. And shout out Chickster, because I think you guys should be walking away happy. And thank you again for Kennedy Chandler too.
Hmm.
Thank you for drafting him for us and us giving you a second round pick and some cash for him. You can buy a nice steak dinner for the rest of the rookies there.
Yeah, Jeremy Sohan. Jeremy Sohan's a really interesting prospect. I'll stick on that for a second because a lot of people, I would not have drafted him at 9. If I'm being honest, if I had the ninth pick, I wasn't going
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Sohan at all. Um, he's an incredible defensive prospect. He can guard 1 through 5. He never misses a rotation, like ever. His defensive IQ is off the charts. Offensively, I'm not where some other people might be. Some people think like, oh, he's got so much, playmaking upside, like flashes of passing. Um, I'm not totally bought in on the offense, but like you said, they just had to get guys who are like guaranteed to be contributing NBA players, and I think his defense alone keeps him around the league.
Yeah.
And maybe the offense does develop, like we'll see, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's going into a system that is like almost perfect for any rookie to walk into with the San Antonio Spurs with Greg Popovich. And then scoring wise, I mean, the other two picks that they picked up with Blake Wesley and where is he?
Malachi Branham
Malachi
out of
Brown. Yeah,
Ohio State.
they've got scoring there, and then of course you've also got Dejounte Murray that's still there. I know there's been rumors about maybe them moving off of him. I personally, if I was the Spurs, I wouldn't just yet unless you got a really good haul for him because they've been making some good moves. They're finally kind of embracing that rebuild. Dejounte Murray is a centerpiece for that rebuild. He's not too old just yet, so you can still get some good years out of him. Maybe if you're running low on picks and you're still kind of needing to rebuild, maybe then you can look to trade him. But I like what the Spurs are building down there. If I could just stick with the Pistons for a minute, because I want to talk about what Detroit has been building. I think their past 2 drafts have been excellent drafts. Want to talk about last year, Cade Cunningham, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart. I think all of those worked out pretty well. Sadiq Bey with a random 51-point game to end the season. Like, the most random and probably forgettable 51-point game, if we're being completely honest, from last year. But the fact that the man dropped 51 is just insane to me. And I thought Sadiq Bey was a pretty good prospect coming out last season, so I'm happy to see him flourishing with Detroit. And then it just seems like they just plugged in and they added more just great players with Ivy and Duran here. I think both of those can be really cornerstone staple guys. I think they complement each other really well, just the two of them even. And I think the two of their skill sets will really compensate and help what Cade has already brought to the team, what Sadiq brings to the team, Stewart coming off the bench. That's your enforcer off the bench. I mean, that man, it took an entire team to stop him. He was, who was the fight with? Was it with the Lakers last year that he just tried to fight the whole team? What team was it that he?
Was that the Heat?
Maybe it was the Heat. I can't remember who it was, but it's just, I mean, the entire coaching staff of the Detroit Pistons, it took all of them to slow him down. It's like
Oh
they were,
yeah,
it was like they were trying to tackle Derrick Henry. There was,
yeah. That's what I was gonna say.
that's what it looked like, and he's just shrugging them all off and running through, fixing to go murder a guy. It's crazy,
Yeah, I
but
agree with you. I think the Pistons have drafted phenomenally in the last couple drafts. The only real miss they've had recently is Killian Hayes,
mm,
and like that was not a surprise. Like I think at
yeah,
the time of the draft, we were all like, "Yeah, this guy. He's not that guy. He's just not that guy."
yeah,
But they have their backcourt of the future. They now have one of the best center prospects from this draft, who's just super athletic. Still got Isaiah Stewart. You got Sadiq Bey, who, like you mentioned, is joining the Corey Brewer, Brandon Jennings, random 50-point game club. And that's always nice to have in your back pocket, I guess. But yeah,
he's
they have,
he's
they have a
done it
bunch of
once.
players
He
that
could
complement each
potentially
other
do it
really well.
again. Every team has to keep that in the back of their mind now.
Exactly, exactly.
Uh, but Detroit definitely has jumped up on my list of league pass teams that I want to watch. They may have even leapfrogged over the Hornets, unfortunately. As much as I enjoyed what the Hornets were building, just some of their decisions recently has really been a killer. In my opinion, I think and I hate this because I thought they were building in a good direction, but I don't know what MJ is doing, man. I just don't know what he's doing. He's been getting flamed on Twitter today too, by the way, especially after the re-coaching hire of a former coach that they did not have too much success
Mhm.
under and was recently fired.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
but
haven't totally jumped off the Hornets yet, but they've definitely lost some momentum. I will say that. They've lost
yes,
momentum.
yes, and like I said, I think Detroit now is that young, sexy Eastern Conference team that
Hmm.
was like the Cavaliers, like the year before that, when they started adding like Darius Garland, Colin Sexton, and Evan Mobley, all those guys, and then they were kind of hand in hand with Charlotte as like the young Eastern Conference teams, because the Eastern Conference is it's better, but it's still weak when you get into that bottom 7 to 9, 10 teams.
Yeah,
So I'm not saying Detroit could make a push for the playoffs, but I don't think it's crazy to say that they could be there for 10 or 9 to make the play in.
sure. And I mean, what is Detroit? I haven't checked recently, but doesn't Detroit have like $50 million in cap space
It's
too?
it's like 30 million, I think.
Okay. But they've got a lot, and
They
they've
have
cleared a lot of money off the books by moving Jeremy Grant.
yes, and
So I think like if you get that young core like playing well for a little bit, like maybe not this off season, but next off season,
mhm,
if you can attract like a big name guy, as Alex Chick would say, max
yeah,
free agent
max free
to
agent. I
Detroit,
mean,
it
it
might
shouldn't be
actually be a
hard.
thing.
Shouldn't be
That might
hard.
age really well,
It
actually.
it might actually. Here we are making fun of Chick for his take, a 2-year-old take, but it maybe 5 years down the road, he just saw the future. He saw the vision of
It's
what
true.
Detroit was trying to do, and we were just blinded by our hubris to not see it. Uh, okay, so now we'll move on to your losers of the draft, who are guys, teams that came in here and were just like, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and fold on the 2022 season, at least when it comes from drafting
For sure.
prospects.
Sure. Um, so my first one that I want to talk about is the Sacramento Kings. And this is not an indictment on Keegan Murray at all. I think he's going to be a, solid, dependable two-way player, probably carve out a long career for himself. I have nothing against Keegan Murray as a player. I just think like the Kings are a train wreck of a franchise. an absolute train wreck of a franchise. And I think if you have the number 4 pick in the draft and you're staying there, you need to take a guy with a much higher ceiling than
Hmm.
Keegan Murray, if I'm being honest. Plus, the thing that makes it worse is that teams were still calling the Pistons after they drafted Jaden Ivey trying to get him. The demand for that guy was very, very
Hmm.
high. And so the fact that they were not able to find a deal for that pick is crazy to me. I don't understand how they weren't able to move that pick and get a decent return for it. Um, so that's a little, especially because I think that's their only real pick of this draft, unless I'm
Yeah,
mistaken.
I think you're right.
Um,
I don't
so
recall a. Do they even have a second round pick? Let me.
I think they did, and it got traded, if I'm not mistaken. I think they
Jaden Hardy.
drafted Jaden Hardy, and he's going to Dallas. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I
yeah,
remember that trade
so
now.
that's it's just kind of where the Kings are as a franchise. That I want them to do something, and maybe it's time. Maybe it is time for them to play it safe. Maybe it's easy to criticize them when they finally don't take a big swing, but you got to keep taking your
Yeah,
shots. You
they
got to keep taking your shots.
had to find that Marvin Bagley replacement for the four there. Uh,
Right.
but which was funny because Memphis was in talks for that, and supposedly the rumor was is that they wanted Jaren Jackson Jr. in return. And it's like, well, you guys could have had him a few years ago. You just decided to go with
Right.
Marvin Bagley. They could have had Luca as well, but
True. It's true.
Sacramento is just gonna get. They're gonna be crapped on for years to come. Now they are it's bad for them, and yeah, I agree. Like, I think this is something that we all kind of talked about too, where, and I think I even recall you saying it in one of your mocks, where Keegan Murray is like one of the safest lottery options. So whatever team got him was going to get a good player. But I'm with you that I think they should have gone with Ivy, even though they seem to keep going with guards. They keep getting top 5, top 10 picks, and they keep going with guards. And
Yeah.
then they hit on them, and then they trade them away, like with Halliburton. Uh, but at the same time, it's just I don't know what their draft strategy is. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're just trying to suck so bad that the NBA makes them move to Seattle, makes them move to a new market, or something. Uh,
Yeah.
but what other you got? Any other losing teams or
I
players
do.
even?
I have two more losing teams.
Okay.
And I'll say just to wrap that up, like I don't want to sound like a Kings hater. I feel like the
Yeah,
Kings get crapped on enough, but
it's the
in the
organization.
context of
It's not the
like the
fans.
draft,
It's the organization.
yeah, it's you know, I De'Aaron Fox, he's fine. Davion Mitchell, he's fine. Sabonis, he's fine. Um, I don't know. I kind of wish they were good, to be honest. It's been a long time. Okay, my next kind of semi loser, I haven't like totally mapped out all my losers, but one that I'm just a little confused about is the Knicks.
Hmm.
Um, they had the number 11 pick in this draft, and they traded it for multiple firsts, which I didn't see the final details of the package that they got.
It was like
Um,
3 protected picks, and they're all next season, I think.
yeah. So I get it if you want to kick the can, down the road a little bit, because next year's class is supposed to theoretically be a stronger class. Um, but this is a team that could absolutely use a lottery pick
Hmm.
on their roster. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see how, I just don't understand why you would punt on this draft because, like, there's no guarantee. We just saw this team, they were a playoff team a couple years ago. Like, there's no guarantee they're back in the lottery necessarily.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, they probably will be if we're being honest, but like, you can't guarantee things year to year. Like, sometimes you're better than you expect. Um,
Yeah.
I just think I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed that they didn't use their use their high pick that they had. Um,
Yeah, they had some players that were right there in their lap. Like someone like an AJ Griffin was someone that a lot of people were kind of hounding them on. He's a New York guy too, right in their backyard, hometown kid. Everyone loves a hometown hero story. Trust me, I've been seeing it all over Twitter with GRIZZ fans and Kennedy Chandler being from Memphis. I'm bringing up Memphis a lot here, okay? which I will ask you about them here in a little bit too before we close the show out. But it is really confusing. Like, is it worth punting on a lottery pick to get off of the Kimber Walker contract, to shed that salary, to have just enough to maybe get Jalen Brunson or Tyus Jones, which are kind of their A and B targets for point guards in the offseason? I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
either. And that's kind of the cost benefit I'm weighing is like, I think I would rather have whoever the number 11 pick would have been than overpaying for Jalen Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they have their intel, like maybe they're seeing how the board was falling and they really didn't like anybody that was left very much, which is fine. You know, you, I, I think teams should follow their board. They should go with what they got. Um, it's just kind of I'm generally against when teams like punt on their picks. That just kind of bothers me.
Especially a team like the Knicks that they're so up and down, which they've been more down recently. 2 years ago
Yeah.
had the up, and then they're back to down. But then also there's also the other side of it where Tom Thibodeau just really hasn't seemed that invested with the young core that New York has outside of R.J. Barrett. He's
Hmm.
really only played Quickly and Toppin out of necessity rather because of injuries rather than because he wants to. He's been more than happy to play D Rose, Kimball Walker, Julius Randle 40 plus minutes a game rather
Right.
than Obi Toppin and Quickly, who played well together in the minutes that they played at down the stretch in the season. They played fairly well together, and it was promising. It is. I'm not saying that they're world beaters, but they're guys. Give them 20 minutes a game each, and they're solid rotational bench pieces to give your starters a break. But
Hmm.
he doesn't even seem to be in the mood to do that. So I'm wondering if Thibodeau had a hand in this at all, where he'd rather go out and get someone like Jalen Brunson, who's a veteran in the NBA, been in the league for a few years and had a good year this past year, would rather throw him 18 to 20 million a year than get a rookie in here that, we never know what's going to happen with rookies. And I know AJ Griffin had some injury issues and concerns coming into the draft, but I'm with you. I still would rather them take that pick and see if there was another move that they could do later on rather than um, just not make this pick. But it does give them some ammo next year or in the future if those picks don't concede because they are
Hmm.
protected picks. But they're good teams. So I'm sure they're all like lottery protected, top five protected, something like that. So they'll probably
Yeah.
have 4 first round picks next year. Maybe that gives them some ammo to move off of more contracts or something. I don't know, but it's the Knicks. Who knows what's going on?
Hmm. Yeah. So maybe I don't know. Maybe they end up looking like geniuses when this is all said and done. But looking at it now, I don't know. Like I like another reason I like what the Spurs did. They had 3 first round picks, and they didn't trade out of any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the Rockets. They took their shots. Um, I'm all for taking your shots. If like, especially if you're a team like the Spurs or the Rockets that is in the basement and you have all these picks, use all of them.
Yeah.
Maybe you hit. Like the more chances you have to hit, the better off you are, I think.
Yeah, or you're like Sam Presti and you have 15, 20 picks, first round picks over the next 5 years. So if you got a guy that you really want, you can literally do what they did and offer 3 first round picks to move up one spot to get a guy that they want.
Oh
Because
yeah,
it's
gives you a
it's
ton
the
of
equivalent.
flexibility.
Sam Presti has FU money. That's what he has with all these
Yeah,
picks.
it's true. My here's my final loser, and it's a lose-lose situation that I have. So it's a 2-for-1 deal, really.
Okay.
The next loser is the combination of the Los Angeles Lakers and
Mm,
Max Christie out of
yep.
Michigan State.
I remember you mentioned this in the Slack.
The Lakers traded back into this draft. They didn't have a pick. They
Mm,
traded into 35, which is one of the earlier picks of the second round. And they drafted Max Christie out of Michigan State. The reason I think this is a lose-lose, on the Lakers side, I've watched a lot of Max Christie. I don't think he's a very good player. Okay. Not trying to hate on the guy. I'm just calling it like I see it. I've watched a lot of him. I don't think he's very good,
mm-hmm.
especially with guys like Jaden Hardy, Kennedy Chandler, EJ Liddell, Ryan Rollins, Trevor Keels on the board. I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand why you picked Max Christie there. I think it's a lose for Max Christie because the Lakers have not in recent memory ever been committed to developing young players. What they do is they get these young players, they do the bare minimum with them, and then they trade them for, a more established
Yeah.
player. Because I can think of so many guys off the top of my head, so many young players who got better once they left the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yep.
Let's just run them off the top. Lonzo Ball got better when he
Mm-hmm.
left the Lakers. Josh Hart got better when he left the Lakers. Um, Alex Caruso, you could argue he got better when he left the Lakers. Julius Randle, Jordan Clarkson got better when he left the
Hmm.
Lakers. Brandon Ingram got better when he left the Lakers. There's probably more guys that I'm missing. But if you look at their roster right now, there is not a single guy on their roster that they drafted, other than I guess Max Christie now. He's the only guy on there that they used a pick on in the last few years and still have. Um, that's just not their thing. Like they don't develop guys. Um, so he doesn't really fit the timeline. Like their thing is we're gonna spend the big money in free agency. We're gonna, trade these assets for, star player because we're trying to compete for championships every year. So I'm not convinced that they're willing to commit the necessary resources to actually get the most out of him. So I think he's a loser in all this too, because this is a horrible destination for any young player who wants to have a lasting career or who wants to stay in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's tough for Lakers fans out there. I say it's tough for Lakers fans. They got a title recently, okay, so
Yeah.
they can't complain too much.
Lemicki.
Yeah, the Mickey Mouse title. Oh, I forgot the Anthony Davis. I forgot what his nickname was. There was a funny bubble nickname for Anthony Davis, but I can't remember it now. Uh, but um, it's just the Lakers' future just seems so bleak. It honestly does. And you're right, they're terrible at acquiring talent. If you can even add to that list of yours D'Angelo Russell and Kyle Kuzma as guys
Yes.
that played.
D'Angelo Russell, he's a guy I definitely forgot.
They're guys that moved away from that team and they got relatively better. I would definitely say D'Angelo Russell did in his part. Kyle Kuzma, he did all right. He did pretty good with Washington, but um, so we'll go ahead and we'll move on here. So I know you have a list of your guys, Karl Heiser certified hoopers. Get the stamp of
Yes.
approval
Stamp of approval.
from Karl Heiser, which is I know it is coveted by college players. So I want you to list off your guys that you have. I think it's like four, or five, or six. I can't remember the list that you had. Saw the list recently. I think you put it on Twitter and on TikTok. Saw it on TikTok too. Again, make sure to go follow Jim and Range Pod on TikTok and Twitter. Links down in bio. So list off your guys, where they went, and just kind of give me a quick summary of how you like the situation that they got drafted into.
Absolutely. So here's my guys. These are the guys that I'm claiming. Okay. Um, Past notable members of the this guy list is Desmond Bain. He was one of my guys.
Shout out Desmond Bain, man.
I'll be claiming him forever. Um, trying to think who else I had like really good priors on. I'm blanking on some of them for sure, but Desmond Bain is the one that I'm most proud of.
There you go.
All right, so here are my guys. Benedict Mathurin, number 6 overall to the Pacers. This guy is a freak athlete. His highlights are so much fun. If you
Mm-hmm.
haven't, you can watch it after the pod. Okay, keep
Yeah.
watching the pod, but after the pod, go watch his highlights against TCU in the tournament. This guy's hitting threes, running full speed off of screens. He's hitting step back 30 footers, and he's throwing down dunks with like so much ferocity. It's crazy. Um, he's a lot of fun. I think he's great. I think he's got more upside than most people are giving him credit for. The handle, not totally there, but his off ball movement is a thing of beauty. And that's the thing. If you join a team with Tyrese Halliburton, you don't need to create for yourself. I'm fine with you not having a handle if you have Tyrese Halliburton on your team. So I'm fine with him just running off screens and hitting threes and blowing past guys on the baseline. So I'm high on Benedict Mathurin. Tari Eason is next up. He
Love
went
Terry.
17 overall to the Rockets. I had him, I want to say 16. So he was right around the range that I expected him to go. Um, he's a very versatile defender. He can guard probably 1 through 4. Um, Pretty solid when it comes to like his off-ball defense. He's got some offensive upside as a slasher. He averaged, I think, I want to say it was like 16 points a game for LSU last year as a sophomore. The three-point shot showed up last year. He shot 36% I want to say. He has a little bit of a hitch in his jump shot, which worries some people. But so did Tyrese Halliburton, who I just mentioned. He kind
Hmm.
of had a wonky jumper, and it proved to not be that big of an issue. If that translates, if that 3-pointer is legit, he's going to be a problem, and people are going to wish that they didn't pass on him as early as they did. My narrative for the longest time has been that Eason is better than Sohan, because I think Eason gives you 75 to 80% of the defensive versatility, plus he gives you like so much more options
Hmm.
on offense. So I would definitely rather have Eason as a prospect, but that's a bit of an unpopular take amongst draft folk. Um, Next up, EJ Liddell, who I mentioned is one of the big steals. He went 41 overall to the Pelicans. I view him as a very solid win now type of piece for a contending team, which the Pelicans aren't. But if you're getting this guy at 41, I think that's still a big win.
Yeah.
Very good offensively, efficient shooter. I watched him live at the opening round of the NCAA tournament. It felt like this guy didn't miss from within like 10 feet. Like he just drop step, turn, hit a post fadeaway, like hook shots, like anything close to the basket, he was just money. And it was beautiful to watch. On defense, he's improved his defense every single year he was in college. He averaged 2.5 blocks a game last year, and he's not like a super tall guy. So that's just like straight effort that he's giving you on the defensive end. So I really like what he brings. Um, Feel free to stop me if you have
No,
any.
you're dude. You're on a
Okay.
roll. You're on a roll. Keep going.
All right. Next up, Blake Wesley, 25 to the Spurs. He took a huge jump this year, and the Notre Dame coaching staff didn't really know what to do with that. He kind of demanded like a bigger role than they really wanted to give him. Um, and he ended up showing like a ton of offensive potential, like really good scorer. He, puts the work in on defense. He can probably guard 1 through 3 at the next level. He's 6'5" with a 6'9" wingspan, and so I think that's something that'll definitely translate. Plays with a really high motor. I wanted him to go to Memphis really bad. I'm not gonna
I
lie. That's where
did.
I mocked him.
Yeah, I did. I did too. You convinced me on him, and I of course watched. You had him mocked to Memphis. I think twice you
Yeah,
did, and
yeah, two different times.
two different times you had him mocked to Memphis, and I think one was at 29, and then one was at 22. You moved him up to 22, and
Mhm.
I was like, I do like this guy. And so far, the prospects that you've named, they were all prospects that I love too, and I really wanted for Memphis because they fit the mold of what Memphis wants to do. Now, I think the guys that Memphis got do fit the mold, but these were big prospects that I was
Mhm.
like, if they were going to move up, let's get those guys. And when EJ Liddell was sitting there, I was like, man, I want them really to jump up and get him, which they did jump up, but it was
Yeah,
to get Kennedy Chandler, not EJ Liddell. But
sure.
anyway, I digress. Continue with your list
I
of the
have two
Carl.
more. I
Two
have two
more.
more.
Okay.
I'll just pop in a quick note on Blake Wesley in my mock drafts. I enjoy doing mock drafts like early in the cycle because people like there isn't like a consensus really early on about like where everyone should go. So you can kind of I feel like I have a lot more freedom to put guys in
Mm-hmm.
spots because I think they're really good versus like, well, I think he's really good, but is he going to go, ninth overall? No, he's probably not going to go ninth overall. So I have to, kind of follow like the general consensus on where a guy's stock
Mm-hmm.
is and, place him accordingly. But Blake Wesley was a guy that I had in the lottery in my first mock draft. Um, I still think he could return that type of value, like top 15 in the class. And he went 25, so maybe that's not crazy to say. Um, but he's a guy that I have definitely liked throughout a lot of this draft cycle. And if you're running him off ball because he's going to so he's going to the Spurs. He'll be off ball. He could be that secondary facilitator alongside DeJounte Murray if you want him to be. Um, Good scoring instincts, plays good defense. I just like it. I like the whole package. Okay, next up, Andrew Nemhard out of Gonzaga. He was, I believe, the first pick of the second round.
Yep.
Went to the Pacers. To me, there. This draft was full of combo guards. There's a lot of guys who, maybe don't have like the pure playmaking instincts. The first like true point guard was probably Ty Washington off the board at like
Mm-hmm.
29. Um, Andrew Nemhard, though, to me, just as like a pure point guard, maybe the best in the class. as far as what he brings you from a playmaking perspective. He is insane out of the pick and roll, the way he manipulates defenses. And the know-how, like his intelligence just shows up every time he's on the floor. He always makes the right play. Um, Defensively, I'm not quite sure on him, but I just think like adding that type of playmaker, he'll probably be coming off the bench. Adding that type of playmaker to your team, I think is a big win. Um, so I've been high on him. And then my last one is Ryan Rollins out of Toledo.
Yeah.
He
Oh
went,
man.
let's see where he went.
I
He
saw
went,
I saw him on the board. So last night when the Grizzlies when it got into the second round, I was looking at second round prospects and I was like, yes, that is who I want them to go get. He fits perfectly. Instantly gets snatched up by Golden State, and I was like, son of a. And why Golden State too, man? Like that's just Golden State. What Golden State did last night was just not fair. How they can just continue to get rich. But anyway, keep going, keep talking about your guy.
yeah, so Ryan Rollins, he was Toledo, smaller school from a smaller conference. He averaged 19 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists last year. He makes the offensive side of the game look so easy, so easy. The 3-point shot isn't like totally there for him yet, but I'm fairly confident that he'll figure it out. At least bump it up a few percentage points and maybe be like mid to high 30s type of 3-point shooter. But he's so smooth on the offensive end, and he makes it look effortless. And even beyond like the fact that he played in the MAC, which is like it's a pretty fun conference with the teams that are in it, but like as far as overall competition goes, um, it's not a power conference.
Yeah,
So, take that for what you will. But I'm a big fan of his game. He's, 6'4" creator. Um, and one of the guys that I had labeled as a sleeper. I feel like, my guys, there has to be a sleeper or two on there, so he's my guy.
I love the list. I honestly do. They're all guys that uh, that I mean I just really like. I like their games. I like the style that they bring, and I think they all got drafted into pretty good places, especially Rollins here because I mean he's got no pressure whatsoever walking into Golden State. I mean, and just if Golden State can turn Jordan Poole into what he is now, then imagine what what this guy's gonna be for 3 4 years from now.
That's one of the craziest turnarounds in maybe NBA history. That man was legitimately the
The
worst player
worst
in the
play.
league. Like not like the fifth worst, like not like the 10th worst. He was the worst player in
Yeah,
the league. He was horrible. He was so bad. And now he's looking like a max contract type of dude, which is why I try not to bash like Keegan Murray,
mm-hmm.
because I'm over here saying I don't think he has that high of a ceiling. I don't think he's a guy that a team will want to commit a large portion of their salary cap to. But you never know. If Jordan
Yeah.
Poole can become like a borderline max contract type of guy, anybody can.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, and I think it all really does depend on situation also, because
Mhm.
maybe in another with another team, maybe he goes to any of the other top 10 teams, and maybe he does turn into that guy, and it's because they have a smarter GM, they have a plan, and they go out and they get pieces that complement each other. And Keegan Murray turns into that guy. Maybe not a max
Mhm.
contract type of guy, but maybe he's like something like what Memphis is doing with Jaren, where it's like
Mhm.
he demands a lot of money, but it wasn't like the maximum amount of money.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of money. He signed $100 million contract, and I think it
I'd say
was
he's
like,
worth that
but
though.
like you could also say like someone like Jaren is worth that. He's worth every. Personally, I think he's worth every penny that Memphis is paying him right now. Just
Mhm.
especially from the defensive side. The offensive side, he definitely it needs to get just a little bit better on that. He
Yeah.
had a down year offensively, but that's also kind of to be
Mhm.
expected with the rise of Desmond Bain and Jaw taking as an importance as he has. So, but speaking
Yeah.
of Memphis, I had to ask this question, and you can be as open and honest as you want to about it.
Mhm.
But Memphis last night ends up getting 4 picks. They do a couple of weird things that I think some fans were a little curious about. After
Mhm.
I stopped the stream, I hopped into a GRIZZ space on Twitter, and I was there for a couple of the picks. and it's mass confusion. It's who the f is this guy? We have no idea. But that's just kind of like the mo of this front office, of what Kleiman does. He finds the guys that he wants, that he believes fits this roster, and he's not afraid to move up and go get them, even if that's not where they were mocked. He doesn't really
Mhm.
care about that, because a perfect example of that is getting Santi Aldama at pick 30 last year in the draft.
That
And
was nuts
that
that he
was
did that.
it was
That
crazy.
was literally that was unhinged behavior. That was crazy that he did that.
but
I
that's
don't think enough people realized how
but
crazy that
that's what
was.
that's what Kleiman does. Because in the same draft, taking Zaire Williams at 10, no one had him as a top 10 prospect. They move up to 10 like a week before the draft starts, and that's the guy that they take. You
Mhm.
even watch in after their pick of getting Roddy from Colorado State.
Mhm.
Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins, their head coach, on the phone with him, FaceTiming him outside, and they're like, "Hey man, we kept it close to the vest. We didn't let anybody know. You were on our radar this whole time. We did not let it slip out that you were a target for us in the draft, and you were one of the top guys on our board." And it was really funny because Roddy was like, "Well, you guys did a great job because I didn't even know that I was a target for you guys." But so run through the picks that Memphis got last night, and then I want to hear what you have to say about it, and then give my Memphis Grizzlies an official Karl Heiser grade for the 2022 draft.
Okay. I'm glad you're putting me on the spot because I recently replied to someone's tweet with their draft grades and said I had legitimately zero idea what grade I was going to give the Grizzlies. So I'm glad I'm on here having to
There you
give a
go.
take. Um, okay, we'll start with David Roddy. He was the first one. Um, he was probably the guy that I was most surprised went in the first round, which apparently very on brand.
Oh, it's super on brand. Again,
Yeah,
when
for
it
your boy.
happened, we were like, "Who is this?" And this is the most Kleinman move that we could think of.
Mhm. Yeah, so as somebody who, it's my thing to be very invested in college basketball. Um, I was I was surprised, but also kind of not because David Roddy was one of the best players in the country this past season. Um, this man is a 6'5" guard wing sort of hybrid. Um, can score the ball, rebounds really well. Can shoot the three. He just does so many things well. He's a bowling ball. This man is a bowling ball. Um, and he's very good at basketball. Um, I'd say I think it's a good pick, honestly. Like, if that's one of the swings you're taking, I don't have a problem with it. Um, Next up, who'd they get? Was it
Uh,
Jake LaRavia?
yeah, they got Jake LaRavia at
Oh, he was
19.
first.
Yeah,
He was the first guy they got.
yeah, they got him at 19.
Oh, okay. Um, Jake LaRavia is a dog. Jake LaRavia is so good. He was barely an omission from the My Guys
Mm-hmm.
list. I didn't have nearly enough priors on him. Funny story with him is his draft stock rose very drastically almost overnight because he and his team found out that he was being listed on Google and all these scouting
Yeah.
sites as being 22 years old when he's actually 20 years old. So they called up all these NBA teams and they're like, yeah, this is wrong. Like, we can verify that Jake is in fact not 22. He is 20 years old. Um, so that's kind of a funny story there. And also like hilarious that like all these teams were like, he's really good, but he's
Two.
22. Like if
Yeah.
he's really good, draft him.
Yeah.
I don't
Which
um
Kleiman has shown he doesn't care to do that either. You know, with
yeah.
with Desmond Bain, Brandon Clark, those are guys. Those 3 4 year college guys, and he was
Mhm.
no problem, and they've turned out great. Your guy Desmond Bain,
Yeah.
forever part of the
I think
Karl Heiser Boys Club.
Jake LaRavia was a phenomenal pick. He projects to be a knockdown shooter. And that is something that I think will fit very well alongside John Morant. I think that was something that they went into this draft needing was a wing who could really shoot the ball. They have Desmond Bain, but like it's a shooter's league, and you need guys basically all along the
Mm-hmm.
perimeter that can shoot the pill a little bit. I really like this pick. He's got size. He said his favorite thing about basketball is trash talking.
Yep. I saw that
I
today.
don't know if you saw that.
I did. Yeah, I watched the
So,
press conference today. So it's gonna
I think
fit
he's a good
right
fit.
in. It's gonna fit
I think
right
he's a
in.
good fit. All right, who we got next?
Kennedy Chandler.
Kennedy Chandler, another barely in a mission from the My Guys list. He's going to be the Sharif Cooper of this draft, except I think he's going to be better than Sharif
Mm-hmm.
Cooper. Um, he's like 5'10" without shoes. The guy's like really short. He's listed at 6 foot, but he's really like 5'10", 5'11". Watching him though, he does not play like a 5'10"
Mm-hmm.
guy. He does not play like a guy who is 3 or 4 inches shorter than me. Um, he is a great shooter. He's very active, jumping passing lanes, getting steals, generating transition opportunities. Um, he plays way bigger than his size. I'll say that. And the court vision he has for someone who's 5'10" is borderline supernatural. This guy's a real creator. He's a very good basketball player. He was a five-star recruit,
Mm-hmm.
similar to Sharif Cooper, but I think he can carve out a pretty lengthy career. Maybe he won't stay in Memphis because like that backcourt's starting to get really full, but
Yeah.
I like him as like a long-term NBA player, which I haven't said. There have been previous short guards where I've been like, this guy's size is absolutely going to hinder him at the next level. And one of those guys was Nico Mannion, who ended up
Mm.
being out of the league within the year. Um, I just didn't see the size for me. It's not always a problem, but with him it was. For Chandler, it's not. It's absolutely not. And if anything, it puts a chip on his shoulder, and he
Oh
plays with a
no,
lot of fire.
I absolutely love it when he slid last night because he was a lot of mocks had him projected going late first round
Mhm.
guy, and he just continued to slide and slide and slide. And not only that, but the team that drafts him ends up trading him to Memphis. So I love dudes that come to Memphis with chips on their shoulder because that means normally that coaching staff knows how to like turn that positively onto the basketball court and get some kind of production. And I definitely think the Kennedy Chandler pick is insurance if Tyus Jones does not come back. Now, I think it would be kind of a struggle a little bit at first, just having a rookie come in and try to kind of do the things that are needed for a backup point guard, especially since John missed so much time last year. And you don't know if he could miss similar amounts of time this year or miss time at some point this coming year. But it's definitely an exciting pick. I'm not upset about it in the slightest. And again, talking about that GRIZZ space that I was in, I had to take my headphones off for about 5 minutes from all the screaming and shouting and cheering that was going on because everyone was unmuting their mics and was just ecstatic that they got Kennedy Chandler. And finally, things calmed down and everyone was able to talk basketball a little bit after that and give their 2 cents about it. But okay, so one more pick to go to at pick 47, Memphis drafts Vince Williams Jr. out of VCU.
Yeah, so this guy, he played alongside Bones Highland at VCU. 4 year guy, but
Definitely
I
on
think he's
brand.
pretty underrated. I don't know exactly what like the top tier outcome for him is. I think he projects as like a 3 and D type of
Mm-hmm.
guy, but maybe won't give you a ton of offense. I'm not totally sure. I'm not totally sure what his outcome looks like, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
But having been in draft circles for a little bit, I know that this was a guy that there was a little bit of buzz, like he's underrated, like he could be really good. So
Yeah.
if that means anything to you,
No, it definitely
that's
does. It
that's
definitely
what I
does.
got.
And I think what the great thing what this front office does is they're not afraid to take risks like that. And I kind of see him starting out as like a two-way guy. This year, the Grizzlies do have a couple two-way guys
Mhm.
like Killian Tilly, Pons, Air Pons, as he's called. I think those guys end up getting cut just because they kind of had their chance to try to make an
Mhm.
impact, and they either just didn't make too much of an impact, or they just kind of did okay with the Hustle, which is the Grizzlies G League affiliate. Or in the case of like
Mhm.
Killian Tilly, he's just been really injured, and it's like, sorry, dude,
Yeah.
we gotta move on. Here
Right.
whatever the cap is, it's not
Mhm.
as bad as it would be. Shout out to my co-host back there, Pacific Union Railroad. Um,
Ayo.
All right. So
Is
we
Santi Aldama a two-way guy, or is he have a
he's
roster spot?
I think he's got a roster spot.
Okay,
I
I
think
wasn't totally sure.
I want to say because I know he spent some time with the Hustle last year, but I think they converted his contract from a two-way to a fully guaranteed contract.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but we're coming
Oh
up. To,
wow, it looks like he's got a 4-year deal.
oh yeah,
Okay,
Santiago.
sure.
Hey, people are excited about Aldama. I'm excited to see what happens in the summer league that's coming up. That's already like a week and a half away, which is the NBA season never stops. We get well,
No,
not
never
till
does.
like August is when we finally get a break from the NBA, and it's 2 months. It's August, September, end of October. It's back, or at least middle of
Hmm.
October. We got preseason.
Takes a
So
back seat in March, and then we're
yeah,
back on track.
yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the NBA does take a backseat in March. Yes, when March Madness rolls around, it's still regular season basketball. It's fun basketball. It's just not as fun of
Hmm.
basketball. Okay,
Yeah.
Carl. So we are going to close out the show with our signature segment. This is for everyone at home. If you missed the first episode, first off, go back and watch it. It was a great episode. It was a long episode. This is kind of a little long one too, but hey, it's been great. I'm happy to have Carl here. It's not very often that I get to talk to Carl face to face like this. So taking advantage of my opportunity here to talk to one of the best writers that we have here
Oh,
at Vendetta, and I mean
I'm
that.
touched.
I mean that. But so Carl, what this segment is, I kind of explained it to him a little bit, but this is taking the stand. So I've got a couple of takes here that I'm going to hand off to Carl, and I'm just going to want him to explain it a little bit to me. Specifically, this is a tweet that you. Oh well, first off, I forgot. I need you to put your hand on the Bible here. This Greek, Hebrew, and English Bible. And
Oh wow.
do you yeah? Well, I again to flex. I took Greek for a year for my undergrad because I wanted to be cool when getting my history degree.
That is cool.
I had to have a foreign language course, and I was like, Spanish is so lame. You know, I took that in high school. I didn't want to do that in college. I wanted to be exotic, and I hated myself for a full year because, good lord, that was one of the most difficult classes that I ever had to take. It's a fun like party trick that I get to flex on people because I do remember like some of the writing and like some of the words and stuff. But other than that, I really don't use it all too often. But it helped me get my degree, and it was fun because I had some good friends in there, and we all struggled at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in the at the library together, frivolously trying to translate things from Greek. So Carl, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about these takes that we are about to talk about?
I will tell the truth
All
about these
right.
takes.
All right. So normally I try to play the other side, but I'm not a draft expert or prospect expert by any stretch of the means. Some years I know more than others. This was definitely a year that I took a back seat and really had to rely on our experts here at Vendetta Sports Media to help guide me through this year. So I'm gonna present these hot takes that you have. This is a tweet that you sent out the other day. So we're just going to talk about it just real quickly, and I just want to hear the reasons why. So the first thing that you talk about, Jabari Smith won't end up being a top 5 pick in the class and is not worth the first overall pick. Now he wasn't the first overall pick we saw, but he was the number 3 pick. But you're saying he's not even going to be worth a top 5 pick when it's all said and done with this class. I want to know. I want to know why. Because he was the consensus number 1 for the longest time up until like 5 hours before the draft. But you're saying he's not even worth that or a top 5 pick.
Here's my thing with Jabari Smith. This man cannot create shots at all. He doesn't have a functional handle. He's very limited to the perimeter. He might be the most like post averse forward prospect we've ever seen. He did not shoot well at the rim. He didn't shoot well from mid range, but he was a 43% shooter from three, and he's 6'10, and nobody's going to block that. He's also a very good perimeter defender. So those are the good things in Jabari Smith's favor. But the bad things are is that he's very limited to the perimeter. He can't create for himself, so you need to have very good playmakers on your team who can put him in good spots. His screen navigation, not super great. Don't love it. And in the post, he's like, it's crazy. He's 6'10, but like he's almost useless down low. Um, I'm just not for with the first overall pick taking a guy that you have to scheme open to get him a shot. When you have like, if I'm a team that's terrible, which usually the teams that are drafting at the top of the draft are very terrible players or very terrible teams, I would rather take a guy who is considered an elite prospect, but that I don't have to like surround with other talents to like get something out of him. Paolo Banchero, you can give that guy the ball in the full court, in the half court, say get me a bucket. Um, Jaden Ivey, he's a nightmare. You can give him the ball and say, get me a bucket. Even Chad Holmgren in the full court, you can give, maybe not in the half court, but in the full court, you can give him the ball and say, get me a bucket. Jabari Smith, not so much. There were a lot of games, a lot of Auburn games this past year where, final possession and the opponents would just deny. They just deny him the ball, and that was kind of it. And then Auburn had to keep it in the hands of their backcourt who couldn't shoot. Um, Also, the games that Auburn's true point guard Zeph Jasper was out, Jabari Smith was not nearly as effective. I just don't understand why you would draft Davis Bertans with the number one overall pick. And maybe that's a little slanderous for me to say, to compare him to Davis Bertans, because I'm sure he'll be a little bit better than him. His shooting and his defense will keep him in the league. Do I think he'll be a star? Probably not. Um, because if you look at the list of, the top 20 scorers this year, how many of them can't create shots for themselves? They're all shot creators, every single one of them,
Hmm.
every single one of them, in some form or fashion, or they have some other, elite skill that allows them to score. Um, I just don't see it with Jabari Smith, and that's why I think he was not worthy of being the first overall pick.
And
Your Honor.
not worthy of it. Thank you. Not even worthy for being a top five pick apparently, or won't be a top five pick player in the class.
I think he's worth a top five pick. I'll say
Okay.
that. He was
Okay.
fifth on my big board.
Okay.
Um, because I think his shooting and his perimeter defense are that good that
Okay.
he's worth it. Like he's that good at those things that you take him. It's just beyond that, like, because how many players have been drafted that like can't handle the ball and got
Yeah.
better at it? Like that's one of the skills that's hardest to develop. Shooting, guys figure that out. The only guy I can think of is like Paul George, who like had a bad
Mm-hmm.
handle and then eventually became like a decent ball handler. Um, it's just we don't have a lot of like good outcomes
Yeah.
um, as far as developing handle goes. So
Yeah. All right. So the last one that I have here, I think it's the loudest that one of the loudest that you've been on, at least on this train. The Shaden Sharp hype is ludicrous given the sample size, and he'll end up burning someone. Ends up going seventh overall to the Portland Trailblazers. What do you think?
here's what I'll say first. I had him mocked at 7 to the Trailblazers because I knew that Mike Schmitz, formerly of ESPN, was very high on Shaden Sharp. I really respect Mike Schmitz for what he does, but I cannot reasonably get on the Shaden Sharp train
I love
because
the comment leading up, the favorable comment leading up to the thrashing that you're fixing to give him. Anyway,
yeah,
go ahead, go ahead. I like you, but
yeah, okay. Shaden Sharp. Here's what we know about Shaden Sharp. He had a very good summer in the EYBL, which is like the top level of high school basketball competition. Played in the Peach Jam tournament, played super well. Kentucky starts calling. He's a fringe top 100 prospect. Suddenly, Kentucky starts calling. Oh, look at that. He's a top 10 guy. He reclasses to go to Kentucky early. And then he ends up being the number one player in the class, except he is the most fraudulent number one player in the class ever. And the reason I say that, Scoot Henderson was ahead of him. He goes to the G League. So he reclasses, goes to the G League. So he's no longer on the recruiting list. Jalen Duran reclasses. He just got drafted. He's no longer on the same list that that Shaden Sharp is on.
mm-hmm,
Um, Shoot, there are a couple other guys who like there are a bunch of guys who like reclassed or like went
mm-hmm.
pro, and that just like kind of default like bumped him up until he was number one. Um, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. I don't even know where to begin. Um, He has some enticing scoring traits. I'll say that. He hits tough shots, but the problem with that is that he's also taking a lot of tough shots. He's got really good vertical athleticism, like 40, we're talking 40-inch vertical. This guy can jump out of the gym. His lateral athleticism, though, I'm not super impressed with. He doesn't have a great burst off the dribble. He doesn't have a good enough handle to where he's like really, he's not like super shifty. Like he's not, breaking anybody's ankles or anything. I just think given the sample size, because I forgot to mention this, he didn't play a single game at Kentucky.
Hmm.
And then there was some like weird stuff about whether he was actually eligible for the draft because his high school may or may not have lied about whether or not he graduated or not. But that's
Hmm.
a completely different thing. We have never seen a player get this much hype as like he's going to be so good with absolutely nothing to work off other than like some really good play in the summer and with as dramatic of a rise up the recruiting, rankings as Shane Sharp. At least I can't think of one. I can't think of a guy who, within a year of being drafted in the top 10, was barely in the top 100 for his class. Um, I there are things to like about Shaden Sharp for sure, but I don't understand the people who are willing to die on the hill of he is going to be a star player. There were people I was seeing that had him number 2 on their big board. Number 2. Like
I remember seeing those.
that's not something that like you can just say with this amount of evidence. Like you have to be real sure about him if you're going to say that. And the thing is like if he doesn't pan out, people are going to forget that like oh, everyone like hyped him up. I don't understand how people can hype him up with so little to go off of. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like these narratives are being started about him that may or may not be true. Um, I think the hype is crazy. I think it's ridiculous. Like it's just not something we've ever seen before. I don't even think people know like what they're saying about him sometimes, and what they think he could be. Is there upside? For sure. There's definitely upside. Like these teams do their homework. I'm not sitting here saying like he shouldn't have been drafted in the top 10. If teams worked
Hmm.
out with him, they know he can presumably produce at some level.
Yeah.
I just can't buy into the hype
Yeah,
based on what we've
I'm
seen.
curious because I know, and this kind of happens with every sport, but I know it definitely happens with the NBA, where usually the reason why you see guys that have like good tournaments that jump up in the draft is specifically just because they have good tournaments and the owners that really don't have much to do with the team from a basketball sense, or they're just they look at it more from a business sense. They're like try to get their GMs like, hey, go get this guy because he had a really good tournament, and he may not be the perfect fit, or he may just had an excellent tournament. He just had a good string of basketball games, regardless of what type of run that his team went on. Um, so do you think that some of that hype around him, that manufactured hype, because again, like you said, I've seen him mocked super high throughout the year, and it was crazy because yeah, like you said, he didn't play a single game. I'm like this dude's getting mocked in the top 10, and I haven't seen him play. Like where is this guy? I was wondering that all season long. Where is this guy? Is he gonna play? Is he not? But he ends up not playing. But yet here he is, and it's like even in the latest mock, the mock that was updated 3 minutes before the start of coverage on ESPN, ESPN in their final mock draft, they had him going number 9. So again, top 10 pick in the eyes of the experts over at ESPN. Do you have any inkling of an idea why they would continue to push this narrative that he is that guy? Again, not saying that he can't be, but just from the sample size that we have, which is none, to justify saying those type of things about him. Because I feel like
Hmm.
athletic and linked and like the stuff that they were saying, I could go down to my local community center and find 4 guys that fit that exact same description. It's like I'm not seeing, and I'm not trying to be mean to Sharp here. I'm just trying to say it's like the vague language behind
Hmm.
it when we don't have the tape just
That's
it just sounds like what you would consider as an average basketball player that can play at a high level.
That's like I said, I trust a lot of these GMs and a lot of these front offices, and I trust Mike Schmitz a lot to do their homework
Mm-hmm.
on people. Um, but I can't like you said, with the evidence that we have, with what we have available to us, obviously NBA teams have more than we have, but based on what I can access, I don't see anything to suggest that this guy's going to be great. Maybe he is, but based on what I have, I can't justify going there without taking some very big leaps in logic. Um, the thing with him and the hype train is once the hype train gets started, it's very hard to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this in both directions. When like a guy's stock starts falling, sometimes it gets kind of hard to stop. When a guy starts rising really high, nobody wants to be the team that misses. Nobody wants to be the team that's like, this guy could be generational and we missed on him. So while I do think they do their homework, I think some of it, they're susceptible a little bit to the hype. We need to get this guy if he turns out to be anything. Like we have to, because if he ends up being the best player in this class, like all these people are hyping him up to be, and we didn't take him,
Mm-hmm.
that would be dumb of us to do. So I think some of it is buying into the hype a little bit. Um, and then maybe a little confirmation bias too, going into the workouts where it's like, yeah, I can see it, even
Yeah.
if there's not really anything like insane there. But I don't know. I don't work in a front office. Maybe one day, but not
That'd
today.
be nice. We need to get vendetta workers in all the front offices across all of sports across the world, and maybe even vendetta owns its own sport team. At someday, like I said, I keep pushing. We need to do, and we'll close here again. Follow Karl Heiser. I'll even put his personal Twitter down in the description below. So go give him a follow if you don't
Yes.
follow him. And then of course the Jim Arrange Pod on Twitter, TikTok. And when do you guys plan on starting that back up? Just as soon when we get closer to college basketball?
We will be doing an episode next week.
Love it. I was about to
We have a
say
guest as
you have a
well that we're
guest.
very
Oh,
excited about.
I
So,
cannot wait.
yeah, stay tuned for that.
I have missed the Jim Arrange podcast. That is one of my
Oh,
favorite podcasts that we
thanks.
have.
It will also be a
So
post-draft episode.
good,
Um,
good. So
yeah.
you will get to go there and you'll get to hear, instead of an expert and me talking, you'll get to hear two of our experts going at it and talking, and you'll get some other perspective with Cervantes and this mystery guest that they will have as well. But on TikTok, as I was going to say real quickly as we close, is that there is a an account that I follow, and they call themselves the youngest football club owners in the world. They're like 18, 19, 20 years old when they bought
I've I've
this
come across these
these
guys.
this professional is it's really like an amateur club, I think, but they have secured promotion in back-to-back years. And I think if they are promoted one more time, then they're in the same UK league as Ryan Reynolds's Wrexham team, however you say that name. But that's crazy to me. And they literally bought this team and they turned it around and they turned it into a personal brand on TikTok. So they get income from TikTok, income because people are like, "Oh my goodness, here's this team. They're famous on TikTok. Let's go watch them." So there's more fans in the stands, and they're
Mhm.
actually winning games and they're securing promotions. It's crazy. That's something that Vendetta has to do. Just buy a low level team, build it back up. All oh crap, what's the show that where it's the American guy who goes to coach soccer, Ted Lasso. That's
Yeah,
it.
Ted
Yeah,
Lasso, Ted
we
Lasso.
have our very own Ted Lasso scenario where it's the entire Vendetta office goes over there, and we try
Or maybe
to
we can get a like a fan-controlled football team or
there
something.
we go. That's it right there. Or maybe the USFL will expand. Who knows? Who knows what'll happen. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. This episode of Court is in session. And again, thank you to Karl for taking time out of your day to talk to us, give his expertise on the NBA draft. It's always fun to be an NBA fan, a basketball fan, because like we dropped earlier, the season really never stops. And we've got Summer League coming up. So we'll get to see these rookies in action fairly quickly. And then free agency is also right around the corner, too. I think it's the 6th is the memorandum period. And then the 9th is the official start of free agency. And when that happens, it's all bets are off. There could be massive trades with the Kyrie situation, KD not knowing what his future is going to be, Westbrook potentially on the chopping block. Could be massive shifts in the NBA landscape. And you know what? I'm here for it because we talked about it last week on the episode. Despite the Golden State Warriors winning yet another title, it's really open. There's a lot of parity right now, and there's a lot of stuff that can happen. So fun time to be a basketball fan. And of course, my Hogs look like they're going to be pretty good at basketball next season. So I can't wait. Can't wait to look at them and watch them go. Hop on back on the must bus. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. This episode of Court is in session. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode drops here on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, then please give us that 5-star rating. Would much appreciate it. Again, this is Jackson Law from Vendetta Sports Media signing off, and we'll see you guys next time.